Grace, I wanted to start with sort of the big question. What was it about the script that others had written that made you, an Oscar nominated screenwriter, say, I want to make that my directorial debut?
I think a couple of things. First of all, it's so much easier to work with other people's material, isn't it? That's one thing. This script, I had been looking for a little while, and what I saw in this script was something that I didn't see in other scripts, something that could be both politically urgent and something I could approach with the lightest of touches, which is really important to me. Like, if we're making this movie to speak to people, I want to speak to people. How do you do that? By making them laugh in the broadest sense of that word, but also by not judging them. And in this script, I found the potential for all of those things. And over the year or so that I was developing it with the team, it became what it eventually is up on screen, we hope.
So for all the cast members, this is so wonderful because this really is a multi-generational story. This is multi-generational cast. And I wanted to know what each of you knew about Jane before you started the film and what surprised you about the group and this, incredible period of history in which they were working. Elizabeth, do you want to start?
I'll be honest, I didn't know very much about Jane at all. I had heard about them in passing through, my work in this space, but through my activism in this space. I found it a real delight to learn more about who they were, what the collective had done, and how many lives they had affected. I thought that the sheer numbers that they worked with is still to this day astonishing to me. And I'm really proud to sort of be honoring them with this story.
Grace, what about you?
I actually had never heard of Jane before the script came along, but when it did and I was given the part, I immediately did my research and I was told about the book that played into the script, and I read it, and it was very important to me, and I'm happy to be a part of this story as well.
Are you someone who does a lot of research for your roles? Like you say, there was a book and I picked up the book. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds good to me.
I like to do research as much as I can, just so that I can have it fresh in my mind when I'm playing the character so I can keep it authentic.
Sigourney, what did you know? I mean, you were alive, unlike Grace, during this period. So what did you know, but what surprised you?
Well, I was graduating from high school during this time. There was a young woman who got pregnant and was forced to give away her baby, and so that was not a happy story. And I think it brought home to me, gosh, how many women find themselves in this situation. So hearing about the Janes, there was so much activism back then, women for women. But what I found really touching about the story and about this film is you see the commitment women have to each other across all walks of life. I just felt that this was a story that had to be told again. As Paula said, it's a politically urgent story to remind people of the individuals who are going through this process, what a difficult decision it is. And so I was thrilled to be part of reminding people there's another person at stake here, the mother.
Woon-Mi, what about you?
Yeah, I had never heard of the Janes. I honestly read the script thinking it was fiction. And I was kind of like gobsmacked that this housewife starts performing these abortions. And I'm like, this isn't real. This can't be real. And then when you get to the end and it's, you're listening to, you're reading the epilogue of what happened. I was like, this is real. I can't actually believe that this was normal women doing this for women. Like I had never, I've been, I'm so lucky to have grown up in a place where, choice is you have a choice. And so I was really shocked. And so I put the script down, went online. Is this real? And it was. Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy that you mentioned that, we do see Joy and the other Janes performing these procedures, because Phyllis, I was so struck by the way that you so many times take us through the steps that are necessary for a safe procedure. And I found it's nothing I've ever seen before in a film like this. And I think that people are going to be really blown away. And so I was wondering what your aim was with those scenes. And then Elizabeth, I want to talk to you specifically about the first scene when we see Joy going through the procedure and what that was like for you as a performer.
Yeah, that's a great question. I always knew that we had to show the entire procedure, and the right place to do that, of course, for the narrative is with Joy's procedure. So we take great care in the first half an hour or so to set up how difficult it was to even get good advice about this. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's even sort of absurd advice that she gets that she kind of tries to follow and then thankfully doesn't. But all of that to buy purchase for the long whopping scene in the midst of this, that it's then immediately followed by the warmth and the vibrancy of the Janes. That was really what I set out to do in that first half. Once Joy unwittingly at first, bullied into it by Virginia, picks up her first woman in need of a procedure. That's it. We're on our way. And it was important to show the different kinds of women who were walking into Dr. Dean's office and many others like it. It's overwhelming. And I thought we needed that kind of repetition. Not that we go through the entire procedures, but again, in order to get to, I don't want to spoil it, but in order to get to the last procedure we see, which again is performed in a very different way. So the procedures themselves have this journey or an arc, as well as the women of the Janes and Joy and Grace's character, the daughter.
So Elizabeth, walk me through the day when you were doing the scene where Joy's getting the procedure, because so much of it is on your face and in your eyes, like the way that you breathe, what's going on with her. But I just wondered how Phyllis made that presumably feel very safe and comforting, but just what that was like for you.
And Corey too, Look, I think that, I have 2 children, and the fact of the matter is that women, we give our bodies over to medical professionals all the time. And those procedures none of them are fun. Your annual exam is not fun. And it's invasive, right? And so I really it was a lot of sense memory, frankly. I think Corey was great. I never had an issue. It's like, I think, for me, I really in particular was remembering a time when, as Phyllis said, these procedures have a journey. And I think that first procedure and also the one that she aborts, that she doesn't go through with. For me, I've had that experience of being in someone else's hands, in a man's hands in the stirrups, and having zero empathy coming at me. And that's what I felt like. I just wanted to build empathy for the audience, for this woman and for the other women in the story, going through these kinds of procedures where you are literally giving over your body, your most intimate body, to strangers. And that women have this resilience through that process always and forever, that we've been doing it forever. And that there are also, in contrast to the later scenes, there's other ways, there are empathetic ways to go through that process. And that you can make women feel comforted and cared for when they're submitting themselves to this very, very intimate situation.
It was the only set we built too, Kate. We built that set. It was a set, the hallway and the procedure room. And it was the scene that we shot the most setups for. So there were various, we took the whole day, I think, almost to do that.
You can see the care, like the care and the respect is just so clear, and it's not something you see very often. It's very striking. Sigourney and Elizabeth, Joy and Virginia end up having this sort of back and forth mentoring relationship, which is another thing that we don't normally see in movies that are so focused on women. I wondered how you guys talked about how Joy and Virginia are going to relate and the sort of chemistry they're going to have, and sort of shooting off of that, if you have any other mentors in your own lives that you sort of reflected upon.
Well, it's interesting how it's written that, as Paula says, Virginia has a hunch about Joy, Jackie O. There's just something about her, even though she seems a bit, So I do kind of bully her into helping me. And I do need to do that because, a woman is waiting. But I think it's also that Virginia's a very good judge of people. She's been a lifelong activist. And I think she can just tell, she can kind of just sense where that might be found in a fellow kindred spirit. So it's just a pleasure to bully Evie. And they do have this kind of jocular, after a while, I think that it's so exciting for Virginia to see this woman from such a different world come in and get it and understand that she can be part of it and a very important part of it. Certainly Virginia doesn't realize how Joy will transform it. I mean, I think that would, be just like, what? I think it's so exciting. Mentoring, I don't know that I've had a wonderful mentor like Virginia, who's that funny. Usually they were English teachers or someone. So I don't know. Elizabeth, you speak.
Well, I felt very mentored by Sigourney Weaver, actress extraordinaire, on this project. So she's number one, probably on the list. I thought, the movie is really it's about choice and choices and the respect that women have for different women's choices. And what's interesting is, my character chose to be a housewife and a mother. And I think Virginia's like, yeah, that's great. But I mean, you can make a new choice. That's not the only choice you're ever allowed to make. You're allowed to decide something new. And I think for Joy entering a world, because, we're all in our bubbles and she lives in this, bubble of wives. That's why I think the opening scene is so important to know that she's like, well, I danced with the partner. Like, that's my job as the wife of the part, There's this entire group of women who are not in those kinds of relationships, and they're not baking every night. They're using other skill sets and they're doing other things with their lives. And I think that Joy, I loved watching it occur to Joy that Virginia might believe she could do other things. Like, what an incredibly empowering thing to be given a task and then be good at it and then realize I can actually do even more. And I think that's what Virginia saw in her. Like, there's a capability and a resilience in this woman. And I can use her, frankly.
So at the festival, we're so lucky that there's another film that is about the Jane Collective, which is another wonderful film called The Janes, which I think so many people are going to have the experience I had, which they're going to watch one and they're going to immediately watch the other. And I wondered if any of you had seen the film yet, because I think you couldn't ask for better programming. Have any of you seen it yet?
No,
I haven't seen it. I'm dying to see it.
I'll get to see it. It's on my queue of things, right. But no.
We're speaking, I believe it's the day before the Roe versus Wade anniversary, which is, it's sort of crazy to think about, and things are changing really rapidly. And, I think that the film leaves us feeling good about things, and the world today, maybe not so much. So I sort of wondered, viewed through that lens, what you are all hoping that audiences will take away from the film in terms of how they feel emotionally, and how it may activate people to want to help in a different way that maybe they wouldn't have thought of before.
The biggest thing for me is that without access to legal, safe abortions are still going to happen. They're just going to be illegal and not safe. And so does your opinion on whether or not you would choose to have an abortion really need to be, I don't know, does it really need to impact someone else's life? Because it's going to happen, but now you're just going to risk people's lives.
Grace,
well said. I wouldn't say it any other way. I think building empathy for other people's decisions and choices for me was really important. I've had so many conversations with people across the spectrum, and I remember having a conversation with a woman who said, I remember, getting pregnant with my second child, and we were broke, and then I just thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And I thought, oh, see, so you have empathy. You had an experience that you understand. Now imagine you're not married, or you were raped, or you were this, or it's like, I feel like people's empathy ends at their own lived experience. And I think this movie is a nice reminder that there's a real breadth of experience out there for everybody involved. And maybe a little more empathy beyond your own circumstances is what we need in this challenging moment.
Yeah, I think definitely off of what Wenmi and Liz said, they're going to happen no matter what. And I think it's important that we really look at each woman's situation and what they're coming from, because we don't know, everyone's experience is different.
I think that's what the movie, it's so relevant, because this predicament hasn't changed for hundreds of years. And for hundreds of years in most societies, abortion was an accepted practice of the way of life. And what's interesting to me is that the justices who passed Roe versus Wade, I think 3 of them were Nixon's choices, very conservative, but they recognized that what was at stake was the right of a woman to decide for herself whether to bear a child was fundamental to her dignity and to her health and to her freedom. Because you see that nobody wants to have an abortion. Nobody wants to be in that situation. It's an agonizing decision for each woman. And I think getting to know these women and showing across the board what their experience is, how frightened they are, how alone they feel, how desperate they have to get. I hate to think of women having to go back to these back alleys and, deciding to, take matters into their own hands. I mean, I think in the 20 years before Roe versus Wade, 200,000 to like 1.2 million women were had self-induced or back alley abortions. It's a huge number, and it's not going to be less. So I just am so happy that we've reminded people that there's another citizen. There's a citizen who's alive and in this position, and how can we not want to listen to her and give her the freedom to decide in her own predicament and respect how important choice is such a personal thing.
Phyllis, I'm sure it's something you've thought about throughout making the film.
Yes, and everyone has said most of what I would say beautifully. So what I would like to add is that I would particularly love this film to speak in some way to a younger generation of women who grew up with choice, who may be a little bit complacent about well, what's the big deal? We can always get an abortion. And I hope in some small way the film, while it is a sort of a rallying cry and look how far we've come, it's also a warning that this may go away, and very well within the next 6 months. And so I really want to make a particular plea to the generation of men and women who grew up on the backs of the work of organizations like the Janes, to invoke empathy and political awareness of that. Women have been, as I think Sigourney said, we've been living with this sort of discrimination for thousands of years, let alone, it's nothing new. But we're in a moment right now where we can rally around basic human rights and choice.
And I think just to close out, I have sort of a lighter, hopefully, general question for everyone. What is your advice for your younger self as you were getting into the film industry? What do you wish you would have known then?
That it's okay to wait to work with people who value my ideas.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Woonmi?
I don't know. I don't like giving my past self advice, because if I change anything, I wouldn't be here right now. So I'd be like, just keep going. Everything changes. Nothing's forever. Keep going. Everything's going to work out. It'll be fine.
Probably listen more, and it's okay to say no.
For me, what I remember discovering was that I knew so many talented people, and some people would manage to get jobs and a lot of very talented people wouldn't. And I think it was important to reassure yourself that everyone has their own timetable, and to absolutely, as Elizabeth said, wait, take advantage of the opportunities that where you love the project, where you respect the people making it and they respect you. Start at the beginning. There are many situations that I think you don't need to be in, and you can protect yourself and believe that you deserve the best opportunity, and know that will come to you if you persevere, because that's what we all had to do.
There are so many things I would tell my younger self. Like Grace, I would say no, it's okay, more often than saying yes. It'll define your taste and what you value. But really, I wish that people who surround us early in our career would tell us more often that it's a marathon. Train for the marathon, kids, not for the sprint. That's more glamorous, but it doesn't last. So careers are long, bad decisions are short.